Hello, everyone. Today I will be discussing cyber as one of the major emerging threats to our homeland security infrastructure. Cyberspace is rapidly evolving, and so are the threats that come with it. Former Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, Kirsten Nielsen, stated, "Cyberspace is now the most active battlefield, and the attack surface extends into almost every American home." Next slide. The main topics I will briefly discuss are the methods, which will go into how they go about accessing information and financial data or whatever you have it through the means of cyber intrusions. Next, I will touch on the notable attacks, in particular the most recent ones that we can kind of gauge and be able to show that the significance of cyber going forward into the future and how that will be a problem for us if we don't make this awareness to the future government agencies that will be tasked with stopping the threat from these nation states and other cyber criminals. Then I will go over the damages. The damages will briefly go over all the financial losses, also examples as to national security information that's also been breached due to these cyber intrusions from, again, cyber criminals in other nation states. And finally, I will end with a conclusion based off of my research and what I believe to be the next current threat, emerging threat as cyber means. Again, this assessment will be based upon the analysis of the U.S. and global cyber attacks, the increased usage and dependency on cyberspace, and the interconnectivity of devices in our lives and across the world, and what that entitles. Next slide. Guided by research, this assessment aims to support the conclusion by stating the substantial increase in cyber attacks. Also, the dependency on technology and cyberspace. Cyber attacks and or exploits against the U.S. through cyberspace and different means of technology has seen a significant increase as this technology become more sophisticated throughout the world powers. Nations like China and Russia have become very aggressive with cyber intrusions against the U.S. and its allies. Next slide. According to former Secretary of Homeland Security Kirsten Nielsen, she advised cyber attacks now exceed the risk of physical attacks in her annual address to Congress. This is an example of how cyber is becoming a real threat to not only our homeland security, but also it's being used for military means in the sense of damaging information and infrastructure by intruding on these sophisticated systems and networks to could possibly shut down in all sectors relating to electricity, the light system, transportation system, and all those that fall under the Department of Homeland Security's responsibility. As you can see, this graph above represents the number of cyber attacks that was conducted on a few of the world's biggest countries and whether they were a victim or offender. As you can see, the United States and for the majority of the rest of the world account for more than half of the other countries combined as victims of cyber incidents. However, China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia dominate the offender category by carrying out cyber attacks against other nations, as well as the U.S. Next slide. Methods. The methods they used were targeting defense companies and subsequent agencies for national security information. However, this data shows that the methods nation states like China and Russia are deploying are constant attacks to undermine national security and boost their economic and political power. Another method was through means of hacking financial systems. This includes a huge hack that occurred at JP Morgan, which a nation state was behind. Also, we can look at the example of North Korea and how Sony hacked North Korea and that led to millions, if not billions of dollars in damages to that company, and a loss of private property, and potentially leaks of personal identifiable information. My apologies. Or in other words, PII. Next slide. Now, based upon this data that was collected through research, there are trends from my analysis of the most recent attacks since the mid-2018 that signify the dangers that are posed in cyberspace. We have been subjected to numerous attacks by other nations' cyber infrastructure targeting our financial systems, national security elements, and defense information. From this, it's evident that we are becoming more susceptible to an attack as the adversaries continue to increase their capabilities. For an example, China. China has been deemed responsible for a myriad of attacks against our private industry to undermine our markets and steal trade secrets. With high confidence, the number of cyber attacks against the U.S. is steadily increasing, and it will lead to another catastrophic event, potentially in the near future. This is why the research was done to bring forth and create the assessment to illustrate how these problems are becoming very prevalent in today's society. Next slide. In conclusion, cyber incidents, primarily attacks and intrusions, also are leading to huge financial losses. And just to cover the damages before the conclusion, these losses equate to revenue and or profits that the company and product typically sees. We utilize cyberspace for our banking transactions, elections, social media, job sites with PII or personal identifiable information, and even our home security systems. These all are critically dependent on cyber capabilities to function properly. The biggest challenge is also protecting the government agencies and their information. These informations can be classified anywhere from secret, confidential, or all the way top secret. And any potential leak could cause grave harm to the United States and its interests at home and abroad across the globe. Also, it could be detrimental to our allies, who we tend to share information with for the benefit of the whole world. For an example, the OPM breach of 2015 is a clear indication of how damaging cyber incidents can be. Cyber Ventures estimated that approximately $6 trillion of damages will occur in 2021 because of cyber criminals. In comparison, the U.S. had just reached nearly $6 trillion that was spent since the start of the war post 9/11. Now, when you put that in terms that over a decade ago we went to war, and now we just hit about $6 trillion, in contrast with $6 trillion being lost in 1 year due to cyber criminals. That's a substantial increase, and again, that was given to us by Cyber Ventures, which is a research institution. Next slide. In conclusion, my analysis states that there are many cyber threats that threaten our homeland security and national security. Criminals, nation states, and freelancers, for a variety of reasons, have exploited the cyberspace realm. It has been reports of hacking carried out to steal personal identifiable information, PII, financial gain, media leaks, leaking classified information, disrupting services, and even political reasons. With high confidence, I can say that these cyber threats will likely continue to increase as the world's become more technologically savvy. My apologies. With more cyber dependency, it also increases the level of damage that could occur. With that being said, we could potentially face a threat that's even bigger than 9/11, given the amount of cyberspace that is controlled by the United States and how that affects our everyday life of every American citizen. Next slide. In conclusion, I want to say thank you for listening, and this concludes my briefing and intel assessment on cyber as an emerging threat. I am happy to take any questions. Thank you.